Howdy. So today we're looking at Matthew 16, verses 13 through 20. And we're looking at the part of Scripture where Jesus is talking with his disciples. And he ends up asking them, "Who do they say that the Son of Man is?" And the disciples are sharing with him all these different theories that maybe John the Baptist was the Son of Man, or maybe Elijah was the Son of Man, or maybe Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And the Son of Man is originally a figure that came out with the prophet Daniel. And after having seen the people of Judah having been exiled into Babylon, and he's seen the cruelty and the horrible acts that have been done by the various kings of the world, and he's seen what it is that mankind can truly do. He has a vision, a dream of what it is that these creatures are going to do in destroying the earth. But the truth is that those creatures end up coming from us. We end up doing that damage that was seen by those particular creatures. But then what ends up happening is that Daniel ends up having another vision, a vision of another Son of Man, one who would end up restoring the world instead of destroying it. And in restoring it, he's going to then be worshipped next to God the Father in a way that we haven't seen before. Now, we end up seeing this big question of who is going to be this particular person. Now, with all these different prophets, we see very important, very good people, in a sense, who have done things that God has sent them to do. But we haven't seen someone beyond just being a prophet. And of course, there are the priests, and of course, there are the kings. But what we're looking for is the Christ, the one who is anointed, the one who has come to renew all things in who he is, not just in tasks to be done, but in his very nature. And so what Jesus ends up doing is he switches the tone. Instead of saying, "Who is the Son of Man?" he's saying, "Who do people say that I am?" And what he's showing is that he's equating himself with the Son of Man. He's saying that he's been talking about himself. And then going beyond that, Peter ends up stating, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Now, this is not because Peter is all that special by himself. The thing is that we ends up seeing a lot of things that Peter does where Peter ends up kind of putting his foot in his mouth, and he jumps in when he should have been more careful, and he doesn't pause before he gets in way over his head. So it's not that Peter is this really, really special guy, but rather the experiences that Jesus has shared with his disciples has culminated in this statement that Peter has made, is that he's pulling out what the disciples had suspected, but in reality he was the one who was able to put words to it. Now Jesus ends up saying, "Blessed are you." When he says blessed, he uses a word that talks about salvation. You are saved by this statement, knowing that I am the Christ, the one who has come to save. And with that, what we end up seeing with this idea is he says, "I'm going to build my church on this rock." So he says, "Peter, you are the rock." And then he switches things up a little bit. Now, in reality, we could look at the original Greek and discuss whether the conjugation of rock in both different terms is being used differently. But if we look at the context, and especially the fact that the following passage shows Peter totally not getting it, then what we're going to see is that the disciples as a whole have been shown by Jesus to be brought into this understanding. And he says, "Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven." So basically saying the work that you do here of destroying what is evil and proclaiming forgiveness and hope for all people, that is going to mean something in my kingdom. And then when it comes down to it, don't tell anyone I'm the Christ. Not because it's a secret for only certain people, but because he hadn't died and risen again. And that's truly what the Christ has come to do. See, that's why we are all given the keys to the kingdom, knowing who Christ is, knowing what he has come to do to restore this world in his death and in his resurrection. And in so doing, we are now able to destroy darkness and pursue forgiveness because of his power.